You think the scariest thing in marriage is physical betrayal, no. The most terrifying truth is realizing the man who shares your bed and pays the electric bills is a perfectly crafted ghost. When I saw my husband of 7 years smiling from a silver frame on a stranger's desk, my world did not end with screams. It went completely silent, cold and sharp as a scalpel. Instead of crying, I decided to personally write his curtain call. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Zoe Revenge Stories. I want to sincerely thank you for being here, but I must share that YouTube has completely disabled our monetization, leaving us with zero budget to operate. If you enjoy today's story, please consider supporting us with just $1 so we can pay our hardworking team to sustain their lives and keep creating for you. You can donate by scanning the PayPal QR code on the screen or clicking the link in the description or pinned comment. My name is Melanie Andrews. I am 35 years old, and this is the story of how my perfectly curated life shattered into a million silent pieces. It happened on my very first morning at Aura Nova Dynamics, a premier architectural software firm located right in the bustling heart of downtown Austin, Texas. I walked through those sleek glass doors with a cup of artisan coffee in hand and a chest full of high expectations. Securing a senior management role here was supposed to be a major milestone for me. The office was exactly what you would expect from a top-tier tech company, with open floor plans, walls of living moss, and the low, constant hum of brilliant minds at work. It felt like the beginning of an exciting new chapter. Human Resources guided me to my pod and introduced me to the team. That was when I met Sarah Jenkins. Sarah was a junior user experience designer, probably no older than 26. She possessed this vibrant, boundless energy and a genuinely sweet demeanor that made it impossible not to like her immediately. She eagerly offered to show me the ropes and led me to her desk to share some onboarding files. I stood beside her ergonomic chair exchanging pleasantries when my eyes drifted to a silver picture frame sitting perfectly positioned next to her monitor. The air in my lungs simply vanished. Captured in crisp, high-definition color, was Sarah radiating pure joy with her arms wrapped tightly around the waist of a tall, handsome man. He was kissing her cheek, his eyes crinkling at the corners in a way I knew more intimately than my own reflection. It was Greg, my husband of 7 years. The exact same man who just 4 hours earlier had kissed my forehead at our front door and told me he loved me before heading to the airport for a critical week-long business trip to Silicon Valley. The fluorescent lights above suddenly felt blindingly bright. A cold, heavy stone dropped into the pit of my stomach. Every instinct screamed at me to shatter the frame against the wall, but a decade of high-stakes corporate negotiation kicked in, locking my facial muscles into an expression of polite curiosity. I forced my vocal cords to function. "What a beautiful photo," I said, my voice shockingly steady. "Is that your boyfriend?" Sarah looked up, her smile brightening the entire pod. "Oh, thank you. Actually, he is my fiancé. His name is Greg." She sighed, a soft, romantic sound that made my skin crawl. "He is a tech entrepreneur. He works incredibly hard, maybe too hard sometimes, but he is just trying to build a future for us and move past his grief. His first wife passed away in a terrible car accident 3 years ago. It took him a long time to open his heart again." The floor beneath me felt like a ship caught in a violent storm, yet I stood completely still. I was the dead wife. I swallowed the rising bile in my throat and offered her a warm, practiced smile. "That is heartbreaking, but it sounds like he is very lucky to have found you. Congratulations on the engagement." I survived the rest of the morning orientation purely on autopilot. By noon, I managed to excuse myself, slipping away to the farthest restroom on the floor. I locked the heavy wooden door of the handicapped stall and sank onto the closed toilet lid, pressing my hands hard against my temples. The puzzle pieces of the last 3 years began slamming together with terrifying violence. Every single venture capital pitch trip, every sudden weekend conference, every late-night phone call taken out on the patio because he did not want to wake me. It was not a startup he was building. It was a completely separate parallel existence. I reached into my blazer pocket and gripped my phone. Dialing his number would be so easy. I could blow up his world right now while he was supposedly 30,000 feet in the air. But as my thumb hovered over his contact name, a chilling clarity washed over the panic. Calling him would only give him the opportunity to spin a new web of lies. I needed to know exactly what kind of monster was sleeping in my bed. Was Greg just an ordinary, pathetic, cheating husband, or was I dealing with a calculated, born psychopath? I slipped the phone back into my pocket. The tears I expected to cry never came. Instead, a profound, razor-sharp focus took their place. Friday evening arrived, bringing Greg back from his grueling Silicon Valley business trip. I stood in our kitchen casually tossing a spring salad wearing the face of a woman who had deeply missed her husband. The heavy front door clicked open and he walked in, dropping his leather duffel bag with a dramatic sigh. He walked straight to me, wrapping his arms around my waist and burying his face in my neck. His scent was the exact same mix of expensive cologne and airport coffee I had known for 7 years. I leaned into him, letting him kiss my cheek while my heart beat with the slow, rhythmic precision of a metronome. My calmness was entirely eerie even to myself. I served a perfectly roasted chicken, poured him a generous glass of full-bodied red wine, and sat across from him at our custom-built oak dining table. For nearly 2 solid hours, I listened intently as he passionately complained about venture capitalists' aggressive seed funding rounds, and how close he was to securing the ultimate capital for his next big tech innovation. I nodded at all the right moments. I asked the supportive questions a good loving wife should ask. I watched his mouth move, marveling at how effortlessly the lies flowed past his teeth. "You are my rock, Melanie," he whispered, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "I could not build this empire without you." "I know, Greg," I replied softly. "I know." By midnight, the house was submerged in absolute darkness, save for the rhythmic rise and fall of Greg snoring in our master bedroom. I slipped out from under the heavy duvet, grabbed my silk robe, and moved silently down the hallway to his home office. My grief had completely evaporated, replaced by a cold, calculating drive. I did not want to cry. I wanted raw data. I pulled his old backup laptop from the bottom drawer of his mahogany desk. Greg always underestimated my technical literacy. Over the years, I had picked up enough networking and system administration skills to manage complex software integrations at my firm. Bypassing his outdated login security and firewall took me less than 20 minutes. I accessed our supposedly secure shared cloud network, bypassed the two-factor authentication by mirroring his synced tablet, and began digging through his hidden directories. I was hunting for the classic digital breadcrumbs of a cliché affair. I fully expected to find digital receipts for overpriced roses, luxury hotel bookings, or perhaps diamond earrings. I found absolutely none of that. Greg was far too meticulous to leave a trail of cheap romance. Instead, what I uncovered hidden within nested, vaguely named system folders was a labyrinth of sophisticated asset transfer documents. The screen cast a harsh blue glow on my face as I opened file after file. My breath caught in my throat. These were not love letters. They were financial death warrants. Row after row of encrypted spreadsheets detailed the systematic draining of my personal retirement savings. He had been forging my digital signature for the past 14 months, quietly siphoning off thousands of dollars at a time to avoid triggering bank fraud alerts. Worse, I found a complete set of notarized documents proving he had secretly refinanced our beautiful Austin home. He had extracted massive amounts of equity, funneling hundreds of thousands of dollars into an offshore shell company registered under a corporate name I had never seen before. The sheer scale of the theft was breathtaking. My hands hovered over the keyboard, trembling not from sorrow, but from the sudden terrifying realization of his absolute ruthlessness. He had gambled away nearly 80% of our combined net worth. But Greg was not finished. My cursor hovered over a subfolder simply titled with Sarah Jenkins' initials. I clicked it open. My eyes scanned the dense legal jargon of the portable document files inside, and a fresh wave of nausea washed over me. There were guarantee agreements, title deeds, and land appraisal forms. Greg was actively manipulating Sarah into signing away the rights to a massive plot of undeveloped commercial land she had inherited from her late grandfather. He had convinced that sweet, naive 26-year-old girl to use her family legacy as collateral to fund the construction of his supposed new startup headquarters. I sat back in the leather office chair staring blankly at the glowing monitor. The puzzle was finally complete, and the picture it painted was horrifying. This was never about a midlife crisis, sexual boredom, or a wandering eye. Greg did not love Sarah, and he certainly did not love me. We were not his partners or his romantic conquests. To him, we were nothing more than easily manipulated piggy banks. He was milking us dry, transforming our trust and our futures into liquid capital to fund a colossal, shadowy financial gamble. He was a parasite feeding on our devotion. I closed the laptop, the soft click echoing in the silent room. The man sleeping down the hall had stolen my money, my home, and my reality. Now it was time to systematically destroy his. Over the next few weeks at the office, I made it a point to stick close to Sarah. I brought her oat milk lattes, invited her to lunch, and casually asked about her wedding planning. Initially, I thought I was gathering intelligence on an enemy. I expected to find a cunning, calculating homewrecker. Instead, what I found was profoundly pathetic, and I say that with genuine empathy. Sarah was not a villain. She was just a remarkably naive 26-year-old girl desperately craving an epic love story. She showed me the heartfelt, agonizingly poetic text messages Greg sent her about his imaginary grief. She cried actual tears detailing how hard it was for him to visit the cemetery on his dead wife's birthday. The dead wife, of course, being me. The irony was incredibly bitter. The classic scorching jealousy you are supposed to feel toward the other woman never materialized. I looked at her beaming, innocent face over our salads, and all I felt was a heavy, suffocating pity. She was completely hypnotized by the tragic widower routine. I realized then that I could not just blow up Greg's life and walk away. If I did, Sarah would remain tethered to him, and he would legally drain her family's generational land before she ever realized what hit her. I had to protect her. She was just another lamb wandering into my husband's slaughterhouse. I doubled down on my late-night digital forensic work. While tracking the routing numbers connected to the offshore shell company, I stumbled upon a glaring anomaly. There was a third financial thread. Every single month on the 15th, a wire transfer of exactly $50,000 was deposited into the Shell account. The origin of these massive injections of cash traced back to a private wealth management firm in Florida, authorized by one individual name, Valerie Cruz. A basic internet search brought up dozens of high-definition magazine covers and financial articles. Valerie Cruz was not some hidden mistress. She was a 48-year-old self-made real estate billionaire based in Miami. She was a titan of industry, known for ruthless acquisitions and a notoriously sharp temper. Why on earth was a billionaire casually handing my husband $500,000 a year? I needed answers, and I could not get them through a computer screen. I marched into my human resources department, cited an urgent family medical emergency, and requested 4 days of immediate personal leave. By Tuesday morning, I was boarding a direct flight to Florida. I arrived in Miami entirely transformed. I swapped my understated Austin tech firm blazers for a severe high-fashion charcoal suit, pulled my hair into a tight chignon, and armed myself with a fake portfolio. I managed to secure a brief 10-minute introductory meeting with Valerie's acquisitions team under the guise of an independent commercial market surveyor offering exclusive demographic data for her upcoming retail expansions. Her corporate headquarters occupied the top 3 floors of a towering glass skyscraper overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. When I was finally ushered into Valerie's corner office, the air pressure seemed to drop. Valerie Cruz was stunning, terrifying, and dripping in understated wealth. She sat behind a massive slab of imported marble, barely glancing up from her tablet as she instructed me to begin my pitch. I did not open my portfolio. Instead, I sat down, folded my hands, and looked her dead in the eye. "I am not here to talk about commercial zoning, Ms. Cruz," I said, keeping my tone perfectly level. "My name is Melanie Andrews. I believe you are intimately acquainted with my husband, Greg." Valerie froze. Her manicured fingers stopped hovering over her screen. She slowly raised her head, her dark eyes locking onto mine with an expression of pure condescending amusement. She leaned back in her plush leather chair and let out a dry musical laugh. "Ah," Valerie said, her voice dripping with venomous pity. "The crazy wife. Greg warned me you were mentally unstable. He said you might try some desperate, unhinged stunt before the divorce papers are finally signed." I did not flinch. "Divorce papers? Do not play dumb with me, honey," Valerie sneered, standing up and walking toward the floor-to-ceiling windows. "I know all about your manic episodes. I know about your refusal to accept the separation. Greg and I are business partners, yes, but we are also building a life together. I am funding his new technology empire. The moment the ink is dry on your settlement, we are merging our assets and getting married. So whatever pitiful scene you came here to make, save it." The sheer audacity of his lies actually made me smile. Greg had customized a completely different reality for each of us. To Sarah, I was a tragic ghost. To Valerie, I was a psychotic, clingy ex-wife, delaying his rise to greatness. "Valerie," I said softly, reaching into my leather tote bag, "I am not crazy. I am entirely, completely sane, and I have never seen a divorce document in my life. Greg and I share a bed every single night in Texas." I pulled out a thick manila folder and tossed it onto her pristine marble desk. "Inside that folder are the forged mortgage documents he used to steal the equity from my home," I continued, my voice echoing in the vast room. "You will also find the routing numbers for the offshore shell company where he is funneling your monthly $50,000 investments. He is not building a tech empire. He is stockpiling cash." Valerie's arrogant smirk faltered. She walked back to the desk and opened the folder. Her eyes darted across the highlighted banking anomalies. "And the final page," I instructed quietly. Valerie turned to the last document. It was the high-definition photograph of Sarah and Greg alongside a copy of the land guarantee agreement Sarah had signed. "That is Sarah Jenkins," I stated. "She is 26 years old. Greg told her I died in a car crash 3 years ago. He is currently engaged to her, and he is actively using her inherited commercial land as collateral to secure even more loans." I watched a spectacular transformation occur. The smug, untouchable billionaire vanished. As Valerie Cruz stared at the smiling face of a 26-year-old girl clutching her supposed future husband, her skin went absolutely pale and then flushed with a terrifying, violent red. The realization that she, a ruthless business mogul, was being expertly manipulated and milked for cash by a mid-level tech fraudster hit her like a freight train. The silence in the office grew so heavy it felt hard to breathe. When Valerie finally looked up at me, her eyes were completely devoid of warmth. They were the eyes of a predator whose territory had just been breached. "Where is he right now?" Valerie asked, her voice dropping to a dangerous, icy whisper. "I returned to Austin on a Thursday afternoon and immediately sent a text message to Sarah. I could not have this conversation in the suffocating environment of our corporate office. I asked her to meet me at a quiet, dimly lit bohemian coffee shop located several miles away from the Aura Nova Dynamics campus. When she arrived, she looked like a vibrant ray of sunshine, wearing a bright yellow sundress and a wide, welcoming smile. A sharp pang of guilt struck my chest for what I was about to do to her innocent reality, but the truth was a necessary surgery. We sat in a secluded corner booth. I ordered us 2 herbal teas and took a deep breath. I did not waste time with soft introductions or small talk. I simply reached into my leather tote bag, pulled out 2 pieces of paper, and slid them across the rustic wooden table. The first document was my official state-issued marriage certificate. The second was a highlighted copy of the commercial land mortgage agreement she had blindly signed, showing the transfer of her family estate into Greg's dummy corporation. Sarah picked up the marriage certificate first. Her bright eyes scanned the document, her brow furrowing in confusion before widening in absolute horror. Melanie Andrews, she read aloud, her voice trembling violently. Date of marriage, October 12th, 2013. She looked from the thick paper to my face, the blood draining from her cheek so rapidly I thought she might actually go into shock. Her eyes rolled back slightly and she slumped forward, her forehead hitting the wooden table with a soft, dull thud. She had genuinely fainted. I quickly grabbed my glass of ice water, dipped my napkin into it, and pressed the cold cloth to the back of her neck. She woke up gasping for air, and the tears immediately followed. She sobbed quietly into her hands for about 10 agonizing minutes, her slender shoulders shaking with the weight of the betrayal. But then something miraculous happened. The crying stopped abruptly. She grabbed a napkin, wiped her mascara-stained cheeks, picked up the land deed, and her sorrow morphed into a fierce, blinding rage. "That absolute bastard!" she hissed, her voice dropping an octave, completely losing its usual sweet melody. "He told me he spent his weekends visiting your grave. He made me buy him a sympathy card on the anniversary of your supposed death." "It gets worse," I told her softly, and then I explained everything about the offshore accounts and the billionaire in Florida. By Friday evening, the three of us were standing in the expansive living room of a lavish downtown Austin penthouse. Valerie had flown in from Miami on her private Gulfstream jet. She walked through the double mahogany doors wearing a stunning tailored designer coat, looking like a terrifying goddess of vengeance. The visual contrast between the three of us was almost comical. Valerie was a 48-year-old billionaire powerhouse exuding ruthless authority. I was a 35-year-old corporate strategist dressed in sharp business casual. Sarah was a quirky 26-year-old designer who was nervously clutching a cup of iced matcha tea. Yet as we sat around the massive glass coffee table, we formed the most unlikely formidable war council in history. We started comparing our notes, and the dark, twisted comedy of our shared tragedy quickly bubbled to the surface. We realized Greg was not some sophisticated evil mastermind. He was just an incredibly organized liar who shamelessly recycled his material. "Did he ever give you the dramatic speech about how his heart is a walled fortress that only you could break into?" Valerie asked, casually pouring herself a generous glass of ridiculously expensive bourbon from the penthouse minibar. "Oh my God, yes," Sarah gasped, her eyes widening. "Word for word. And did he claim he was severely allergic to shellfish, so he could avoid taking you to high-end seafood restaurants?" I burst out laughing, a genuine loud laugh that felt entirely foreign but wonderfully liberating. "Sarah, he ate an entire platter of oysters with me on our 7th anniversary. He just hates spending his own money on you two because he needs to stockpile his cash to maintain the illusion of his wealth." Valerie shook her head, chuckling darkly as she took a sip of her drink. "A massive technology empire built entirely on restaurant coupons, fake allergy excuses, and dead wife sympathy. How profoundly embarrassing for him, and honestly, a little embarrassing for us." As we bonded over our mutual humiliation, the shame melted away, replaced by an ironclad sisterhood. We opened our laptops and began dissecting his synchronized digital calendars and private emails. Together, we finally pieced together his ultimate endgame. Greg was organizing a massive, highly exclusive pitch gala scheduled for the second week of the upcoming month. He had rented out the grand ballroom at one of the most prestigious luxury hotels in the city. He was planning to stand on a brightly lit stage and present his fake software startup to a room packed with aggressive venture capitalists, wealthy angel investors, and tech journalists. His goal was to secure $10 million in Series A funding to legitimize his shell company. And the foundational capital he was using to prove his current valuation to these investors, my drained retirement funds, Sarah's stolen family land, and Valerie's monthly $50,000 cash injections. Sarah looked at us, her jaw set with a fiery new resolve. "We have all the financial records. We have the forged signatures. We should just call the economic police right now and have him arrested for grand fraud." Valerie took a slow sip of her bourbon, her dark eyes flashing with a predatory, dangerous gleam. She looked at me, and I knew exactly what she was thinking. A simple, quiet police arrest at our suburban home was far too merciful for a man like Greg. He would just hire a sleazy defense attorney post bail and drag us through years of exhausting, quiet litigation. No, I said, leaning forward and resting my elbows on the glass table. Greg loves two things far more than he loves money. He loves his inflated ego, and he loves his carefully crafted reputation as a brilliant, tragic hero of the tech world. Valerie smiled a sharp, terrifying expression that sent a thrill down my spine. Exactly, Melanie. If we just throw him in a jail cell tonight, he becomes a misunderstood martyr. I want him to burn in the exact spotlight he built for himself. We are not just going to take our money back and send him to prison. We are going to let him climb onto that beautiful stage, look into the eyes of the most powerful investors in the state, and then we are going to strip him naked of every single lie he has ever told. We spent the rest of the night plotting every logistical detail. The silent, obedient, trusting women Greg thought he had conquered were officially dead. In their place stood a flawless, unstoppable machine fueled by righteous anger. We were about to meticulously engineer his spectacular downfall. The final week leading up to the gala was a masterclass in psychological endurance. Every single morning, I woke up next to a man I now knew was a complete parasite, yet my heart rate never spiked above a resting 70 beats per minute. The adrenaline of our planned heist had completely anesthetized my grief. 2 days before his massive pitch event, I stood in our laundry room carefully pressing his $3,000 bespoke Italian suit. The hot steam hissed loudly against the dark wool fabric as I smoothed out every single wrinkle. Greg leaned against the doorframe sipping his morning espresso, completely oblivious to the fact that I was cheerfully preparing his execution uniform. "You are going to absolutely crush them tonight, honey," I said, handing him the freshly ironed jacket with a warm, supportive smile. "They will not know what hit them." "Thanks to you for holding down the fort, Mel," he replied, kissing my cheek. His lips felt like dry, dead leaves against my skin. Across town, Sarah was executing her own flawless performance. She played the role of the devoted, naive fiancé to absolute perfection. She sent him dozens of heart-filled text messages every few hours wishing him luck and telling him how proud his late wife would be. More importantly, she met with him for a quick lunch on Wednesday and cheerfully signed a stack of official-looking legal documents he pushed across the table. He thought they were the final authorization forms transferring her family land into his corporate trust. In reality, they were legally binding trap documents meticulously drafted by Valerie's vicious corporate legal team. By signing them, Greg unknowingly cemented his own undeniable guilt in attempting to defraud a vulnerable investor. The snare was set, and the prey was happily chewing on the bait. When the night of the gala finally arrived, the atmosphere inside the grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel was electric. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm golden glow over hundreds of the wealthiest venture capitalists in the state. The air smelled of expensive perfume roasted prime rib and the intoxicating scent of raw ambition. We arrived separately, a synchronized strike team moving into position. Valerie, utilizing her massive influence and a highly strategic $50,000 anonymous donation to the hotel management group, bypassed the standard security checkpoints entirely. She marched straight up to the second-floor mezzanine and entered the master audio and visual control room. With one terrifying glare and a few whispered threats regarding non-disclosure agreements, she dismissed the two terrified sound technicians, effectively taking total command of the lighting rigs, the microphone feeds, and the massive high-definition LED projector screen dominating the main stage. Meanwhile, I slipped through the bustling catering kitchen completely invisible in a breathtaking floor-length emerald green evening gown. My heels clicked softly against the polished marble as I navigated the shadowy corridors leading directly behind the main stage. My lungs burned. Every single breath felt shallow and sharp, like inhaling shards of ice. I found the small black podium where Greg's presentation laptop was temporarily staged. The countdown clock on my phone indicated I had exactly 3 minutes before the event coordinator returned. My hands moved with robotic precision. I pulled Greg's silver flash drive from the port and replaced it with an identical silver drive that Sarah had spent the last 48 hours rigorously recoding. The new drive contained the exact same file names, but the payloads were drastically different. I slipped his original drive into the deep pocket of my gown turned on my heel and melted back into the crowd just as the stage manager walked by. Out on the main floor, the room was buzzing. I grabbed a slender flute of sparkling champagne from a passing waiter and positioned myself near the back exit. From my vantage point, the entire ballroom looked like a beautifully orchestrated chessboard. To my left, standing near the towering ice sculpture, was Sarah wearing a stunning crimson dress, looking every bit the proud partner. Up above, hidden behind the tinted glass of the control booth, Valerie was ready to pull the levers. And right in the center of all of it was Greg. He looked incredibly handsome, radiating an aura of total invincibility. I watched him firmly shake hands with billionaire investors, flash his signature winning smile, and confidently pat the shoulders of industry journalists. He was completely unaware that his every single move was being monitored, tracked, and trapped by 3 women standing at 3 precise angles around him. He thought he was the ultimate puppet master, completely blind to the strings wrapping tightly around his own throat. The lights in the ballroom began to dim. The low hum of conversations quickly faded into an expectant silence. The master of ceremonies stepped up to the microphone to introduce the keynote speaker. I took a slow, deliberate sip of my cold champagne. As I looked at the man who had stolen 7 years of my youth, I searched my soul for even a single drop of lingering affection or hesitation. There was absolutely nothing. My heart was a glacier. The storm was here, and I was ready to watch him drown. The spotlight snapped onto the center of the stage, blindingly bright. Greg strode up to the podium, adjusting his tailored lapels with the practiced ease of a seasoned visionary. He smiled that magnetic, devastatingly handsome smile that had successfully fooled me for 7 long years. The crowd of wealthy investors fell utterly silent, completely captivated by his charisma. He leaned into the microphone and began spinning a breathtaking tale about the future of digital architecture, promising every single person in the room that they were looking at the dawn of a brand new technology empire. To truly understand our unprecedented growth trajectory, Greg proclaimed, raising his hand dramatically toward the massive light-emitting diode screen behind him, you need to look at our verified revenue projections for the next 12 months. He pressed the button on his remote clicker. The screen did not show a bar graph. Instead, an enormous high-definition image flashed across the 20-foot display. On the left side was a brilliantly forged death certificate, bearing my name completely with a fake coroner stamp. Right next to it, dominating the right side of the screen, was our perfectly legal, completely valid marriage certificate, dated from 2013. A wave of confused murmurs immediately swept through the grand ballroom. Glasses clinked as people leaned in, squinting at the bizarre documents. Greg froze. The color instantly drained from his face, leaving his skin an ashen, sickly gray. He frantically mashed the button on his clicker, desperate to skip to the next slide. It was a fatal mistake. Sarah's coding was utterly merciless. The next slide hit the screen like a physical blow. It displayed a massive, undeniable spreadsheet of the $50,000 monthly wire transfers from Valerie's private accounts, clearly routed into his offshore shell company. Another frantic click brought up the stolen commercial land deed with Sarah's signature circled in bright red. One more desperate push of the button revealed the absolute masterpiece. It was a side-by-side comparison of 3 text messages he had sent to me, Sarah, and Valerie on Valentine's Day. They were completely identical word for word, right down to the spelling errors. The murmurs in the crowd violently escalated into a chaotic symphony of gasps, angry whispers, and outright laughter. The brilliant tech visionary had been reduced to a pathetic exposed fraud in less than 60 seconds. I stepped out from the shadows near the back exit, grabbed a wireless microphone left by the catering team. and began walking slowly down the center aisle. My emerald gown caught the light as I moved. "Excuse me, everyone." My voice echoed through the state-of-the-art sound system, cutting through the rising panic in the room like a silver blade. "It seems our chief executive officer forgot to update his presentation deck. He also forgot to mention that his deeply mourned late wife has miraculously resurrected just in time to attend tonight's gala." I stopped right at the front row, looking up at the man who was now visibly trembling behind the podium. Sweat beaded on his forehead. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. From the left side of the room, Sarah stood up from her table. She did not cry. She looked at him with an expression of pure, unadulterated disgust. And then the ultimate killing blow descended from above. Valerie's voice boomed through the master speakers, dripping with absolute authority and venom. "This entire company is a mirage built on stolen capital," Valerie announced to the room of her wealthy peers. "My name is Valerie Cruz, and my legal team is currently filing high-level criminal charges against this man for grand financial fraud, forgery, and embezzlement. I suggest you all keep your checkbooks firmly closed." It took exactly 5 minutes for Greg's entire universe to collapse into dust. The investors rushed for the exits, deeply offended and angry at the monumental waste of their time. The hotel security team marched up the steps of the stage, flanked by the event coordinators. They physically grabbed Greg by his expensive lapels and escorted him down the back corridor. As they shoved him through the heavy double doors, I saw the flashing blue and red lights reflecting off the lobby glass. The Economic Crimes Division of the police department had been waiting patiently for the show to end. 6 months later, the suffocating corporate air of Texas felt like a distant nightmare. I sat in a plush lounge chair on a pristine, sun-drenched beach in Miami. The rhythmic sound of the ocean waves provided the perfect soundtrack to my newfound peace. I picked up my frozen margarita, the salt rim stinging my lips just perfectly. To my left, Sarah was laughing loudly at a terrible joke, her skin glowing with a healthy, carefree tan. To my right, Valerie was aggressively ignoring her work phone, opting instead to clink her glass against mine. I looked at these two extraordinary women, and a profound realization washed over me. I had thought destroying Greg would be the ultimate prize. But the absolute sweetest revenge was not watching the betrayer fall to his knees. The real victory was surviving the fire, taking absolute control of my own destiny, and forging an unbreakable bond with the amazing friends I found amidst the ashes of his lies. Thank you so much to everyone tuning in to listen to my journey on Zoe Revenge Stories today. Where in the world are you listening from right now? Please let me know in the comments below. If you found my story inspiring or entertaining, please consider helping us out. Our channel was demonetized by YouTube, and we currently have zero budget to operate. By donating just $1 through the PayPal QR code on your screen, or by using the PayPal link in the description or pinned comment, you help pay the wonderful staff here so they can feed their families and continue creating amazing stories to serve you. Thank you so much for your time, and never let anyone steal your reality.